Gavin Newsom is more worried about reaching for a messaging win for a gotcha tweet than maybe making sure that his city doesn't burn. And I just really had to take a moment and say, listen, bro, you might be doing a lot of things, but you're not defending our honor with this tweet. Like, you're not doing anything to speak for the men and women that serve this country. You don't sign up to play a sport to bring this full circle unless you want to go be in the game. You don't do it for practice. You don't do it so that you never get to eat what you want to and always have to lift weights and run hard. You don't do it for that. You do it because one day you might get to play in that game. And regardless if it's a contact sport or not, there's a good chance when you play in that game, it's going to hurt a little bit.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Gains for Girls podcast and happy almost Independence Day. I am reminded this week, today, tomorrow, more than ever, just how fortunate we are to live in the greatest nation. God bless the people who fight for our nation, to our first responders, to our military members, to the families of the fallen, people like me who get to reap the benefits of the freedoms that you all fight for, continue to fight for on a daily basis. We are indebted to you. So thank you. I hope everyone listening and watching enjoys their July 4th and is reminded of just how lucky we are to live in the United States of America. In that vein, we have a very, very exciting guest today to talk about service, but pretty remarkable because not just his service. And he could talk about that for a long time. He's here today to share with you stories of first responders specifically. Through his brand new book called Behind the Badge, we are going to be talking to Fox News contributor Joey Jones. He's just awesome, by the way. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about our sponsor of today's episode. It is Cozy Earth. They have the most incredible bamboo sheets, temperature regulated. They are guaranteed to give you a comfortable night's sleep. They are made from viscose from bamboo, meaning they naturally wick away heat and moisture from your body. They help you sleep several degrees cooler. A few episodes back, when my husband came on with me, he got to share what it's like for him to sleep in these sheets. I know you may be sick of hearing it from me. He shared, of course, he has the same sentiments that I do. The best night's sleep you will ever get. And fun fact here, cooler sleeping conditions, I don't know if you know this, I did not know this, they boost serotonin levels, which means this contributes to an improved mood and reduced symptoms of depression. So literally these sheets will help regulate your mood. Doesn't get much better than that. They have a 100-night sleep trial. Try them during the hottest nights of the year. It's July now. And if you're not in love, you can return them hassle-free, but trust me, you will not want to. Also have a 10-year warranty on all bedding products, meaning that is an entire decade of cool, quality sleep, waking up feeling incredibly refreshed in the mornings. CozyEarth.com. Use my code GAINS for 40% off. Sleep cooler, lounge lighter, and stay cozy. CozyEarth.com. As I said, we're talking to Joey Jones. If you watch Fox News, maybe some of you know his personal story, what he experienced that ultimately led him to where he is today. But it was after high school, he enlisted in the Marine Corps. During his 8 years, I believe, of service, he worked as an explosive ordnance disposal, basically a bomb technician. He deployed to Iraq, he deployed to Afghanistan on separate tours. But during his last deployment to Afghanistan, it was his team that had rendered safe and destroyed nearly 80 improvised IEDs or explosive devices, along with thousands of pounds of other unknown bulk explosives. But it was during that tour back in 2010 when he stepped on and initiated an IED, resulting in the loss of both of his legs above the knee, and severe damage to his actually both of his arms, severe damage to his right forearm. But as I said, now he's a contributor to all Fox News media platforms, Fox News Channel, Fox Business, Fox Nation. He's a fill-in host for several hit shows on Fox, including Fox and Friends, The 5 and the primetime show Fox News Tonight. So very, very excited to be talking with him and to get all of the behind the scenes of his new book, Behind the Badge, answering the call to serve on America's home front. Check it out here. Well, Joey, welcome to the Gains for Girls podcast. Very, very excited to have you on. I was telling you prior to starting recording that, of course, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your service. But even more personally, you have been someone from the beginning who has just been so kind and gracious towards me and, of course, the cause that I have found myself fighting for. So thank you for everything. Very, very excited for the opportunity to talk with you and to talk about your new book that has now just been released, Behind the Badge. But before we get into any of that, it has been a pretty hectic past month or so at this point. We saw the No King's Day protests happening all across the nation, which I will say I was skeptical. But to my dismay, it worked. I woke up the next day and we had no kings. How about that?
Yeah, you watch that army parade and it's literally a celebration of the people that got rid of a king. So I don't understand the connection to begin with. But hey, I'd say the most important thing about No King's Day is that a lot more Americans, I think, showed up to be patriotic than not. And you're always going to have dissent, I guess. But I think a lot of people that were on the wrong side of that are just bored. And I don't get it, but hopefully, they don't stick around long.
Bored and old. All of the coverage that I saw from these No King's Day protests, like the crowd attendance looked like 70 average age, maybe. That might be the low end of that. So bored and old. On top of course, the No King's Day protests, as you mentioned, it was the 250th birthday of the Army, also President Trump's birthday over the past month. We also saw these riots that ensued in Los Angeles, which I've listened to your insight surrounding the National Guard deployment, surrounding the failures of Gavin Newsom, et cetera, on Fox. But there was this interaction on X that I just thought was the most amazing thing ever. And it started with Donald Trump. In true Trump fashion, there's like capital letters in there. It's being sent out really early in the morning. He put out something on Truth Social saying, "If they spit, we will hit." This is a statement from the President of the United States concerning the catastrophic Gavin Newsom inspired riots going on in Los Angeles. The insurrectionists have a tendency to spit in the face of the National Guardsmen and women and others. These patriots are told to accept this. It's just the way life runs, but not in the Trump administration. If they spit, we will hit. And I promise you, they will be hit harder than they have ever been hit before. Such disrespect will not be tolerated. But then Gavin Newsom responded to this by saying, "You sent your troops here without fuel, food, water, or a place to sleep. Here they are being forced to sleep on the floor, piled on top of one another. If anyone is treating your troops disrespectfully, it is you, Donald Trump." And then he posted these photos. Some people have speculated it's AI, given some inconsistencies and some weird phalanges that aren't really matching up in the photos. Some are saying these are really old photos. But I thought your response back to Gavin Newsom was just amazing and so comprehensive of what I would imagine many military members experience. You said, "Amigo, I've slept on softball-sized gravel under my truck the night before an op, under rows of seats at the airport flying home on a delayed red-eye, in the back of a 7-ton butt-to-butt with my buddy and one poncho liner covering us, on top of an MRAP, in the freezing cold, covering my body up with my gear, sitting against a wall with my flak raised, propping my helmet on it like a turtle in its shell. They're deployed to a crisis. None of them are expecting a Holiday Inn." Tell us about this.
Well, and my mind has even grown from that of other examples, but it's like this idea that Gavin Newsom is more worried about reaching for a messaging win, for a gotcha tweet, than maybe making sure that his city doesn't burn, both literally and figuratively, when you look at everything that's happened this year. And I just really had to take a moment and say, listen, bro, you might be doing a lot of things, but you're not defending our honor with this tweet. Like, you're not doing anything to speak for the men and women that serve this country. You don't sign up to play a sport to bring this full circle unless you want to go be in the game. You don't do it for practice. You don't do it so that you never get to eat what you want to and always have to lift weights and run hard. You don't do it for that. You do it because you do all of those things because one day you might get to play in that game. And regardless if it's a contact sport or not, there's a good chance when you play in that game, it's going to hurt a little bit. And these guys and gals deploying as crisis response to support a community that's in peril, it's not supposed to feel good. It's not supposed to be a Holiday Inn. It's supposed to be put your gear on, suck it up, and go do the work. And that's what they train to do. That's what they like doing. And the real disrespect to the troops is the fact they had to be there to begin with. And that's the leadership in California. On top of that, though, I mean, have you ever spoke to a lineman or somebody that responds to a natural disaster, like, say, a city burning down? It's not like they're hanging out in some fancy hotel either. So when you make decisions that allow communities in your state to burn down, what do you think those first responders were going through? How do you think their life was? How do you think their family was sitting up at night hoping not to get a call that they got caught up in a fire they couldn't get out of? Or even the LAPD officers that were combating the riots when they finally were allowed to. And you want to talk about these National Guardsmen or Marines sleeping like Marines and National Guardsmen sleep when they're training? Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And you're right. This is what they prepare for.
Yeah.
And you mentioned first responders. This is what, and military members, this is what their families grow to and have to be willing to accept as tragic as it is, especially when you're deployed overseas. That's what you sign up for. It's what your family expects. And I, of course, this is not something that my husband has ever had to deal with, our immediate family, but nonetheless, you would imagine even being a spouse to a military member, it's something you have to be okay with. So totally. To your new book now, again, Behind the Badge, Answering the Call to Serve on America's Home Front. You mentioned first responders. That's what this book is. It's a tribute to first responders. Can you just briefly touch on a little synopsis of the book and I think what inspired you to write it and why now of all times?
Yeah, I think this is going to be my most important work. I think I really do, or at least this point in my career. I wrote a book a few years ago called Unbroken Bonds of Battle, where I highlighted 9 service members and a Gold Star wife, all of which were close friends, most of which were really close friends for more than a decade. And the feedback from that book was how it helped so many other veterans and veteran families deal with the trauma they had been through and understand that they weren't crazy for thinking some of the things they thought or experiencing what we call PTSD. And also it allowed them to be more prideful because, I mean, when you read that book, the stories are highs and lows, and the highs are heroic. But immediately after writing that book, I realized that I had all these first responders in my life. I had these firemen, police officers, state troopers, a Maine game warden, Jeremy Judd, that's in the book, that I'd sit around a campfire and heard their story. And I was in absolute awe at what they endured. And for me as a service member, I go to war for 6 months. If you're in the Army, 15 months. You come home. You're not in any environment similar to what you were at war with. You got to leave your war literally across an ocean. But if you're a first responder, your battlefield is the community you live in. I mean, the intersection where you responded to a fatal car accident involving a young child last night is the one you're driving through this morning to take your kids to school. And you've got to reason through that. For some of the firemen, they go past an apartment building every day to take their family to dinner. And in that apartment building, they've responded to domestic abuse of the worst kind, drug overdose, time and time again, fires that, somebody cooking meth burns down 3 or 4 other apartments and destroys lives. And they go past this apartment building every day to get to work or to take their kids to school or to go out to eat. They live in their battlefield. And the best way to explain it, I guess, the anecdote or the turn of phrase that really makes a lot of sense is the worst day of our lives as regular citizens, is another shift for them. And I start the book telling the story about my dad when he passed away and the firemen that responded and seeing him a few weeks later and having to tell him, no, he didn't make it. That's the point of this whole book is like, that was just, for all I know, they did 2 or 3 other calls like that night. And it was the most traumatic thing I've gone through, and to include war. I mean, when you do CPR on your own dad, it's not easy. And so to know that they had to carry the burden of seeing that look on my face of fear that night, and the only thing that could make it better was them doing their job. Did they walk away thinking, man, could I have done more? Yeah, I don't know. And so I sought out to find out. And I found 9 amazing, as the first chapter says, ordinary individuals in extraordinary situations day in and day out. And part of the book is to exacerbate on or expand on this, conversation between defund the police and support the blue. But really, it's a larger, more objective view, because if you read this book, I don't have to tell you what to think. You're going to read it and you'll know what the right thing is.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I have a friend who just finished fire school. He just started as a fireman here in Tennessee, and he's shared with me some of the calls that he has had to respond to. I mean, so early in his career. I mean, he's only been doing this a few months. Whether it's car accidents, of course, whether it's fires, whether it's self-inflicted wounds. I mean, some of the most horrific things. And as you said, this is just another day in the life for him. I can't even imagine. But it's remarkable in the way that you do this, because you're not just telling these stories, you're telling the motivations behind it. You're sharing about their families and their values. What are some common themes that you saw, that you discovered, that drives these men and women to serve?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. When you write a book and you learn that you have an idea going into it, you go through it, especially a book like both of mine where I have other people weighing in. And then on the back end, you sit there and you go, wow, what did I learn? I learned a lot. There's a lot that I wish I'd go back and put in the book, because I've had more time to process, because the way we wrote the book is we interviewed each of these individuals based on what I knew about them and questions I had for them, and then let them expound on what they wanted to. And so for just about each one of them, what I thought they would talk about wasn't exactly what they ended up talking about. But some of the common themes, some of the things that really sewed the thread between all of them together, first and foremost, is that they learned early on in their career that it's going to come at a heavier price than they thought. Jeremy Judd, the main game warden, says, I had no idea I would see as many dead people as I have, because he ended up being a rescue diver or recovery diver as a game warden. I thought I'd be with animals and hunters. No, it's saving people, hopefully, and recovering their body. And so they all learned early in their career that it was a much larger weight that they would carry and never get to take off. And then they all decided the mission was worth it, that it was worth it to save their community, to be there for them. Some of the other things you learn, the thing I learned most coming out of it is we've had 20 years of a conversation about supporting veterans' mental health. I mean, it started as early as 2003, 4, and we're to a place now to where it's pretty much universally recognized that veterans' mental health is a problem. It's something that needs to be looked at, and society needs to support. That conversation has yet to even be started, to get started with our first responders. And the psychological and trauma that they endure is, I hate to say it, it's probably more than any of our veterans, because we do these snapshots. They do it daily. Keith Dempsey, the second chapter of the book, says it's called Suffering in Silence, because nobody knows to talk about it. They don't believe they could. A lot of them don't want to talk about it because they don't want to take away from us in the military. They don't want to be seen as comparing themselves to us if they say, yeah, I think I have PTSD. And so the grassroots effort happens in the fire halls and in the police precincts and on the SWAT team. It just happens in conversation. They're figuring it out for themselves. The resources aren't there. And so to understand, one, that how heavy of a burden it is, and that they decide to carry it, and two, the support for it really isn't there, and they still end up doing 30 years on the force or 20 years in the fire hall. It just really is incredibly inspirational. And the best way I can frame it, the best thing I can say is, when you leave your house as an American, we talk about being entitled. Our largest sense of entitlement is that if we wreck our car, somebody will be there to save us. If a natural disaster happens, somebody's going to be there to save us. If our house catches on fire, somebody's going to be there to save us. If we go into a medical emergency at Walmart, somebody's going to be there to save us. We do not doubt that. Nobody doubts that. Now, is the police always going to make it there in time if there's an active shooter or something? Those are situations that are incredibly rare that people may doubt. But as far as car wrecks and somebody, you always believe they'll be there, and you never think about what that means to them that are there in those worst moments of our life. And just to think, like, when you look at this book, we've got somebody from LAPD and Baltimore County SWAT. We've got firemen from Dalton, Georgia. We've got police officers, Indiana State Patrolmen. These aren't large cities. These are small municipalities and local rural areas but their stories are just as impactful as what you see in Chicago Fire or hear from, like Nashville or Boston.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we learned anything from the last election, it's that these stories matter in these small rural parts of the country. So thank you for being able and willing to tell their stories. I imagine it took a toll on you hearing what both these men and women had to say to you. If there's one message, last thing about the book here, if there's one message that you want readers to take from Behind the Badge, especially as they're waving the flag this summer or tomorrow on July 4th, what would that be?
We live in a special place. We live in a place where we talk about our all-volunteer military. Nobody's holding a gun to anyone's head and saying, go be a police officer. I mean, I say all the time, why would somebody want to be a police officer the way they're treated in some places? And the onus is always on them to be perfect. If you want to answer that question, read this book. If you really want to understand why somebody would do that, read this book. And it's from an absolute place of selflessness and service. And it's this idea, which our military understands, I may sacrifice all of my tomorrows so that you have a chance at yours. And this is not individuals like that.
Yeah, I asked myself that question. Again, I my great grandfather and on both sides of my family, both my mom and dad's side, they both served in the Army. But my parents did not. So I would say I'm relatively removed from what that lifestyle looks like. And I found myself over the LA riots, especially asking that question of, oh my gosh, why in the world would anyone want to be a police officer in a city like LA? So again, this book, it does perfectly encapsulate that. And I wish I had read it prior to asking that question because it really does answer it, like you said. Where can people find the book, and how can those who are listening or watching this support the first responders in their own communities?
Yeah, finding the book's easy. Anywhere books are sold, it's on the shelves in your bookstore. If it isn't, ask them why it isn't, because it should be. Amazon, but we like you to go to foxnewsbooks.com and find it there. But anywhere you find books, anywhere they're sold, it should be available. And I think I think people are starting to really read it and enjoy it, get good feedback from it.
Yeah.
Your last question, how can people support first responders? I say the same thing I say about the military. Start with the ones in your life and having conversations with them. And secondly, from there, if you are active in your community, what kind of support is there for them for their psychological health? And lastly, it's kind of the easy one. Don't be one of the problems they have to respond to. Be responsible. Don't let your house catch on fire. Don't get in a car wreck because you were putting makeup on or texting. Live a responsible life so that you're one less incident. Go get checked up so you're not having a heart attack and take care of yourself so they don't have to respond to a bad day.
Yeah. And I will say at my church, what I have found in asking and being involved in a lot of the different Devo groups or whatever it is, there are fantastic ways oftentimes in the spiritual world, whether that's your church, whatever that looks like, to get involved and give back in that way. That is how both me, my family, my extended family, we do that through our local church. So I would encourage people to check out what their church is doing. And if they're not doing anything, help make that connection for them, because I think it's a really wonderful collaboration. So Joey, thank you for everything. Again, thank you for your service. Excited for tomorrow. We are really so fortunate to live in the greatest nation in the world. And a large part of that is to thank people like yourself. So thank you.
It's a great nation because the people made it that way. When people say thank you for your service, I say thank you for being worth serving.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, you rock, and we'll be cheering you on. All your coverage, I imagine you will be very, very busy over the next.
Very busy tomorrow. We got a 4th of July special from 8 to 10, I believe.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Joey.
Yes, ma'am.
As Joey said, go to foxbooks.com. It should be really easy for you from there. Incredible and inspirational read. And no better time to read it than right now. July 4th being tomorrow. The sense and feelings of patriotism that I can speak to, that I have, that are surging throughout my little hometown in rural Tennessee. But even thinking back to inauguration, I was in Washington, D.C. as Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. It felt different. I knew this year would be a little different. But of course, as we are approaching July 4th, understanding the freedoms that we have because of those who fought for those freedoms. Fantastic time to read Joey's new book, Behind the Badge. So check it out, foxbooks.com. Enjoy your July 4th, your Independence Day. Remember what it means. Really, really critical time in our nation, and very, very proud today, tomorrow, and always to be an American. I love this holiday because I get to rub it in my husband's face. He was on the podcast a few weeks ago when we announced the pregnancy of our family. We're having this little girl coming in September, which is so exciting. But he admitted on that podcast, if you go back and listen, that he was born on the wrong side of the revolution, which I will be happy to remind him tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching the Gains for Girls podcast. Go to youtube.com. That's where you can find all things Gains for Girls, youtube.com/OutKick. And we will see you guys again next week. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. The fight to save women's sports and restore common sense is far from over, and I continue the conversation every week. So make sure to catch more content over here and subscribe to OutKick so you don't miss a thing.